All right, people. All right, my babies. Hit that like, everybody. Come on down. Nice job, Buddha Girl, with the 242 streak. All right. It's a crazy world we live in. Let's not pretend we're all sane in the middle of it. Come on.
Hit the like, share the show, don't forget, subscribe, okay, subscribe, thank you. Memberships are wonderful, thank you for becoming a member, wonderful. 1,000 messages, 100 messages already in Restream chat in just a few moments. We haven't even started, wonderful. Good. Okay, Salty Sylvester has had their crazy pills this morning. Excellent. You'll fit right in, my friend. Yes. Hello, Liberal Dan Radio. Welcome. Boy, have I got news for you. Welcome to the show, everybody. Hi there. Hello, chat room. Hi to the greatest chat room in the history of chat rooms. Welcome to HAL Sparks Mornings, Mega Worldwide, our Monday, Wednesday, Friday show that could quite frankly be divided up into, why are you being weird, you little open trajectory thing? All right, well, be a jerk. See if I care. That could be divided up into probably 6 podcasts as far as its content. I got to tell you, per week, putting out this amount of quality programming, it should be illegal, and it might be very soon if you believe Tucker Carlson. Apparently, I don't know if you know this, but they're coming for all of us. We're all going to be in jail because of thought crimes. That's right. All the things they warned us that the Biden and Obama administrations were going to do, Trump has decided to finally go, can I do that? I'll do that. Let's do that. Let's do that. So, yes, thank you, Celery. I'm glad you liked the title. I had to come up with a sneaky way of typing it in. You'll notice that there is a lowercase L where an I should be, a capital I should be, and there's a 3 in the first word. And the reason is so that, every time I try to type something like that, normally some of the sites will bounce it. So I'm being very... and also, happy birthday to Carl Lessie, our dear friend. Happy birthday. Okay, now a lot of folks are wondering, why, as Dustin Hoffman would say in Tootsie, why are we at war in Iran? Now, I have to say, I can't think of a reason. I've been going over this in my head all day and night, all weekend, since it started. What could possibly be the reason? I mean, yeah, this has been a goal of the PNAC crowd for a long time, but why now? Why this president? Why didn't they just stack this up during, George W. when they wanted to do it, and then use it as a way to, if you're going to punt the elections like everybody's afraid Trump is going to do, which he isn't, you'll end up, why not do it when Cheney's still in office? And, oh my goodness, we may have stumbled upon the exact reason why now. Now, we'll get to why at all. I mean, we've kind of covered that. It's been a Republican goal for a long time, and Donald Trump, for all of his bluster and loudness and bullshit, is a run-of-the-mill, and this is the hardest one for maggots to swallow. I'm sorry, maggots. This could be a tough one for you to hear. But he's a rhino. He's a run-of-the-mill Republican. He's George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush. He's what Reagan was meant to be, which was a figurehead for other people to everything he said about Biden's softening brain and the influence of his cabinet is absolutely true about him. And every step of his presidency so far has been a well-orchestrated, or I guess in air quotes, well-orchestrated, ruse. It's all been planned out. All of his executive orders are just like 2 or 3 pages out of Project 2025. All of his strategic shit but for the stuff that happened without our control over it. Think, Russia into Ukraine, for example, is all straight out of the Project for New American Century. All the stuff that Wesley Clark warned us about, all the things they said Hillary Clinton would do because they wanted to get in and do it. Yes, that's Donald Trump is, and this is, again, a rough word for you guys to hear, typical. That's right. There's nothing special about this asshole. He's exactly like all the Republicans before him with the exact same goals, with one special exemption, one extra thing that stands out. And that would be the amount of blackmail that people have against him, or the potential for, legacy and just legacy rot that exists in his past. The potential for everything you build up is going to be dashed by the part of your life you are not showing to other people. Bombshell investigation verifies key details in 13-year-old Trump accuser's story. This has been going around over the weekend, and I would not doubt that as the speed built up to this story coming out, I believe the Washington Post and Miami Herald and a couple others, I'm sure last week, before this stuff started surfacing, when these details were being checked out, that they were starting to get calls in the White House for confirmation or for comment. Think back to when you first saw All the President's Men. And they start calling around, and your editor is going to say, get a comment from them. And I'm sure they're going to say he's been exonerated and all that stuff, but get him on the record, let him know it's coming, see if you can squeeze anything new out of their response out of them, that kind of stuff, right? The story is about an accuser who was 13 years old when she was sexually assaulted by Donald Trump. So the story is, there are 4 302s. 302s are FBI reports on interviews or when somebody comes forward with a story or whatever, and they run it down. It's not just a tip, it goes to the next stage. 302 is the report that they put up at the base of it. The fact that they did 4 means that a lot of what she was saying as they were doing this checked out. That the details that she was giving them were verifiable and were pointing in, not just dealing with Trump, but with other people involved. They ran down the details of what she was saying, where she was, what was going on when she met Epstein saw him at another event or something like that. They ran down those details, and they turned out to be verifiable. If not true, certainly the concert she said she was at when she ran into Jeffrey Epstein when she was 15 years old, a couple of years later, where he showed up at rando, did happen, and Epstein was there, that kind of stuff. They started running down that stuff. And as you run down those things in the FBI, and then, of course, later as the reporters, it becomes clear that she is telling the truth, that her story stacks up. And there are 4 in the report, 4 302s. They interviewed her, and they went back 3 more times. And at the end of the last one, apparently, she said, "What's the point?" I mean, this happened, the last one happened around, the first one came in when Epstein was arrested, because I guess she felt safe to come forward with it, and probably thought the dominoes would fall. Even though Trump was president, perhaps it would all start coming out, and it was safer now. And then after a bit, she was like, "What's the point? It's not going to help. It's not going to go anywhere." It's Chinatown, Jake. It's basically her feeling about this. And it was safer for her to hide and not end up, suicided or something, would be the fear. Okay. 4 302s. 3 of them are gone. 3 of them were redacted, were hidden by Pam Bondi's DOJ. So of the 4, only 1. And the one that came out is the one with probably the least amount of detail about Donald Trump of the 4. Like if they have to leak one out, they all mention him, but this is probably the least of it. Yes. Is that Katie Johnson's deposition's been on YouTube? It's part of it, yes. And Katie Johnson is not her real name, for the record. Okay. But the news reporters from the Miami Herald to the Washington Post to the New York Post and others noticed this kind of in parallel and started running it down in the last 2 weeks. And as they ran down the details available, and got a look at some of the stuff that had maybe been redacted through the other sources where it made its way to the FBI in the first place, out of Palm Beach, out of New York, they started more than likely calling the White House for comment, and all of a sudden, we're in World War III. And so, for those of you that are just catching up on this, and everybody's like, why? There's a lot of whys. That's why it works as Wag the Dog. You need several whys. And one of the whys has to be that members of your own party have been clamoring for it for years. That's how you do it. It also has to be that at least 60% of the public is against it, and therefore it will be controversial and enough to eat the news cycle. This is how Wag the Dogs have to work. And they have to pull whatever's on the front page or, the headline parts of news programs off the table entirely and replace them. And it only works that way when it's extraordinary, when it is a spectacle. It is literally spectacular. In the case of huge bombs going off and that kind of stuff, or troops on the ground and think Grenada, shit like that, to draw attention away. It has to be, a majority of people have to be against it or nervous, scared about it, so that it will eat up that, the table. If it was an attack that everybody was for, it would immediately get shelved. So the other thing is that doesn't work as well. Wag the Dog does not work as well as it used to. Certainly not for Trump, because he ran on being the peace president and all this other stuff. So maggots are freaking out, and I'll show you a little bit of that in a minute. Tara Dublin's going to be joining us in the second hour to discuss some of this. And I have, by the way, if you haven't had a chance, I released my economic theory on my Substack. It's called Sparksism, and you can read all about it. In the next 5 days, there's a breakdown of each segment of it, and then the actual paper, the academic paper I wrote, because, yeah, is going to be released on Friday, and it will be attached to the Substack. If you're bored and you want to read a big academic paper on my economic theory, that would be it. And then I even used Notebook LM to make a podcast, so it sounds like an NPR couple discussing it, in case you don't have time to read the whole fucking thing. So, and that's on top of submitting my bots bill to California this week, and an article I submitted to the Atlantic, and I'm still waiting to hear on that about whether they're going to print it or I'll just print it myself, called The Halloween Reflex. So I've been busy. And it's called insomnia. No, it's called being up late, taking care of your girl and making sure she's falling asleep and kind of busying yourself while it happens, doing a lot of typing, because, it's not like I can go out in the garage and start sawing stuff. Or 3D printing things, because it's noisy. All right, so woman came forward to the FBI following a 2019 arrest of Jeffrey Epstein and was interviewed by the agency 4 separate times. 4 separate times. A Justice Department source told the Miami Herald that the woman was found credible by the agency. In her interviews with the FBI, the woman accused Epstein and at least 2 other associates, including Trump, of sexual assault when she was 13 years old. She accused Trump of sexually assaulting her, pulling her hair, and punching her in the head sometime in the mid-1980s, which is exactly when he and Roy Cohn and Epstein were all running together. While details of her specific allegations against Trump were not further verified by the Post and the Courier, because those are the 3 that were hidden, Other details she provided the FBI were giving further credence to her account. Details verified by the Post and Courier include the fact that she and her mother had rented a home to Epstein in South Carolina. The outlet also verified details of another associate of Epstein she accused of sexually assaulting her, an Ohio businessman she said was affiliated with a Cincinnati-based college, with whom the outlet confirmed was a member of the for-profit school. The woman also accused Epstein of possessing nude photographs of her as a minor and extorting her mother for money to keep them secret, which she said her mother began stealing money. Her mother went to jail for embezzling $22,000 from the real estate firm, and apparently this was because she was trying to pay off Epstein not to release them. Whether it was to buy them outright or whether it was going to be some way he kept her on a leash for a length of time is unknown. I guess would have been found known if Epstein hadn't escaped. Again, that's my favorite conspiracy theory. I'm going with it. I mean, we don't know. We're not going to know until there's some big unveiling. So until then, I'll choose to swallow the least bullshit part of the sandwich, of the shit sandwich that I can. The one with the most bread. The woman's identity was verified by the Post and Courier by cross-referencing details of her account with various public records and old news clippings, though the outlet declined to name her, and both she and her attorney declined to comment on the report. Due to the sheer volume of Epstein-related materials released by the DOJ, many of the documents contain unverified, uncorroborated allegations that do not constitute evidence and do not establish wrongdoing. This is the legal thing they have to put at the end. I would like to say for the record, when they say unverified, there are two ways to interpret that word. And Trump specifically, and Caroline Leavitt and all the faux Christians in the cabinet are counting on the two ways that unverified and uncorroborated as well can go. Unverified and uncorroborated could mean there is no evidence to be found. We tried to verify it, but we could not because the evidence itself does not exist, and we found a big black hole of nothing. The other thing is that we didn't bother to run it down at all. That we stopped or someone else stopped us, or legally we ran into a wall where somebody said you can't look any further without a warrant, and we didn't have enough to justify a warrant. Had we had somebody else come forward, another corroborating witness that could have put a third angle on this, we could have gotten a warrant that would have allowed us to verify, because the stuff we wanted was right behind that wall, right? And so the two splits in this, one is there is no evidence to be found, and the other is there are legal and material and witness limits on what we were allowed to verify. And the Trump administration and Caroline Leavitt would like you to believe this part over here, that it's unverified, uncorroborated, in the same way that the Steele dossier was the dodgy dossier. Dodgy doesn't mean wrong. Dodgy means sketchy. Sketchy doesn't mean wrong. That's the part of it. Parts of a sketch look right and parts of it don't, right? That's the thing. It's not completely wrong, and that's what they want. And they want to keep you away from the parts that are right by your presumption that it's all wrong. So what Caroline Leavitt and them want you to do is think that when you hear unverified and uncorroborated, that they're unverified and uncorroborated because no matter how hard you look, you can't find any details that would corroborate or verify, because they don't exist. Now, you'll notice that they don't say Trump had an alibi. Anytime you hear unverified and uncorroborated when it has to do with Donald Trump, I want you to remember that it would be really fucking easy to clear him of this if there was a specific alibi he had. It would go well beyond immediately unverified and uncorroborated to flat out untrue. This is untrue because on that date I was here. On that date I was there. My wife was with me. I have an alibi. I was on camera doing something, which in Trump's life is, again, the opaque parts of where he was are very specific. You could argue they have to be coordinated. They have to be manufactured. Everybody in Epstein's circle had to have manufactured opaque periods. Places they could go where there are no cameras that they knew of. There are no, records that they knew of. Things like the island and his house and that kind of stuff. And that's what he took advantage of. right? The guy you think is a fellow traveler is actually your blackmailer, and you're like, wait, man, we're keeping this on the down low. Every phone goes into a Faraday bag. Nobody knows you were here. We're, burn after reading, right? That's the way you build a relationship like this, because you have to manufacture your hidden life. Most people have a hidden life because nobody gives a shit what you're doing. It's usually, it's funny, until someone is accused of a crime, they often don't keep track of where they were and what they were doing. It takes them a minute. Like, did I go to the fucking grocery Wednesday or Tuesday? It was Tuesday. Like, you have to do that. When somebody knows they're going to get busted or is planning a crime, a lot of times it's like, no, 9 a.m. I was there. I was there till 11:12. I remember looking at the clock because I heard a lady's phone ringing, and she said that, at that moment, and I was like, oh yeah, I got to make a phone call. And I looked at my watch, and it was 11:12, and I wrote that down. You'll see right here that I could not have been at the house when it caught fire, right? That kind of shit. When people start really, keeping track, normies, civvies, start keeping track of their schedule, it's usually when they're up to some sketchy shit, quite frankly. Because you got to thread a needle of, okay, I only have an hour of wiggle room to do whatever wrong you're going to do. So when it comes to people like Leon Black and Les Wexner and Donald Trump and that crowd, you build a not only a business persona, but also a public persona that gets tracked, whether you want it to or not. And so, like a celebrity that has to put on a disguise to go shopping or whatever, unless you're Keanu Reeves, in case you can ride your motorcycle anywhere because you're wearing a helmet. But the helmet, I think, it proves my point. You have to create, often with the help of others, either your very close assistant and her ties to Leslie Groff and Kellen and that crowd. You have to concoct an opaque period where you could hide what the fuck you're up to. And when you do that, unless you're building an alibi for later at the time, you're just pretty much like it's where I think Trump and a lot of his buddies were in the 80s and 90s. None of your fucking business where I'm going. The Noam Chomsky response to why were you hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein and what were you doing, right? That Trump and his buddies all just went, none of your fucking business. I'm going out, right? And the problem with that is that later, if the chickens come home to roost and you were not expecting it, you don't have an alibi. And if you try to construct one in a hurry, it works in the 80s, maybe the early 90s, but after cell phones and photographs and people start keeping records, and certainly after you start becoming a political figure and you start bitching about the president's birth certificate, or you start acting like you're going to run for president, people in the media perk up, start paying attention. Right, UGLY, that is Trump's alibi, right? But does that make sense to you guys? That one of the things that Epstein gave these guys was an opaque space to carry out their offal, a hidden place, where allegedly, and later, it seems like he was collecting stuff on them, but the idea was that they could go and get their freak on like Diddy parties, and it was nobody's business. And you could argue that to some degree, depending on how much compromise Diddy allegedly had on people, that he was better at it, that he was setting up these compromising situations, and he was very narrow in who he was gathering shit on. And maybe that's why, they both ended up in jail, but Diddy's still alive. Pam Bondi suggests read after burning. Yeah. Read after burning. By the way, Burn After Reading is a great Coen Brothers movie, and it's some of Brad Pitt's best work ever. Just saying. So, Sean Combs would create this situation that was very similar. A lot of these guys, there's a tried and true methodology to how you use compromise to control other people for your own financial gain and power. And in the case of Jeffrey Epstein, it was certainly more overt. It was certainly, over time, like we're aware of it. And as his ties to the Russians got more obvious. Do I have, is Instagram's being weird again? We'll try and kick this up. Hold on one second. Let me bring this in. Now we've got Instagram live. Look at that. Excellent. Everybody on Instagram can go to YouTube and hear the first half hour monologue. But the point being is that whether it's, P. Diddy or whether it's Epstein or Roy Cohn or Donald Trump himself, gathering compromise on people and basically learning it from any country that would do, the honeypot system of the Russians or the Chinese. And no doubt, I'm sure the Saudis got into that business as well. And certainly the Trump family wishes they had some sort of toehold in it. And maybe they do. Maybe that's what, Trump does not use email specifically for the reason that he doesn't want to trace back to him. So there is a much higher chance that as someone who specifically is aware of the dangers of using email, doesn't use it to do anything worthwhile specifically for that, is that he could not just, he's not a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's, he's a fellow traveler. And there are some benefits that to the myth that he's a victim of Epstein that a lot of Republicans, including Tucker Carlson and others, are using. It's this idea that Epstein's Jewish, therefore Israel has control over Donald Trump because they have the Epstein files, and he's got to do what he wouldn't do this normally, but he's trapped by circumstance. And if you believe Glenn Beck, it's not him that's in the files, it's his buddies, and to protect them, he's sending us to a war in the Middle East for Israel's it falls apart very quickly. It's stupid. But point being is that they all kind of operate on this idea that because Epstein was Jewish, it must have been Mossad. Ignoring, of course, the insertion of Russian agents into Mossad over the years, and this and also into Iran, that Russia playing both sides of the Middle East when you're a weaker country and you've moved away and nobody's really going to jump into a nuclear war. One of the things you can do to keep your bigger enemy at bay, the United States, over time until you rekindle the old USSR, which is the goal of Putin and all of his buddies. We're going to get all our land back, and then we're going to go back to where we started, stronger and more scary than ever. One of the ways that you do that, you keep your enemy at bay, is keep them fighting out in little theaters all over the place, Africa, Middle East, Asia. And you set off these things because the American people care about it and our business interests are there. And so there's a mix of innocent victims, and financial issues, resources, and things that are necessary from some part of the world, oil from the Middle East, cobalt and minerals from Africa, lithium and rare earths from Southeast Asia and China and that kind of stuff. And so if you can keep us fighting about that shit in rotation, you can we'll be too distracted to keep an eye on what you're doing and have no appetite for sanctions against you until the time comes. Now, overreach and fuckery and Putin's aging brain have all led to the fact that that they jumped with Ukraine early, or I guess late, depending on your demographic issue, and fucked up. They got stuck. They thought they could win it quickly, and they couldn't. They misread Biden's response. At this point, like Trump is always saying, Putin. He thinks Putin saw what how Biden got us out of Afghanistan, and then he thought this is the perfect time to attack. Well, first, obviously, if he thought that, he was wrong. Literally, it was the worst time because we were no longer committing billions of dollars a week to Afghanistan, and we could move that support to an allied country that does have a functioning democracy that we can support. So it would have been better to do it before we got out of Afghanistan. And maybe that was the goal, but Trump said, look, you can do it my second term, and I'm only going to pretend to get out of Afghanistan. And when I win, I'm going to punt that again, and we'll stay there, and then you can fuck with Ukraine all you want. And I'll use the fact that we've got Bagram and we're in Afghanistan as a say, well, keep an eye on them, but we're more worried about China, and I'll say that. And whether it was, him or people in his cabinet coming up with this is immaterial. It's I think it's a genuine reflection of the conversation that was happening in the White House at the time. Putin makes this stupid decision to go into Ukraine and fucks up terribly, loses over 1 million people to get 8 football fields. And part of what's happening in the Middle East is that there are too many opportunities financially for, the people who've been dealing with Russia's fuckery in these arenas to not jump as Russia's on its heels. You could argue that the war in Sudan and some of the dust-ups around the Congo and in most of sub-Saharan Africa, a lot of the rebel fighting has been because the Wagner guys got pulled back, or there was limited Wagner troops where there had been a bunch of them before. They're basically now assigned to scooping up the gold in Darfur and getting it the fuck out of the country and sending it to Russia to fund the war effort, like it's the fucking Nazis in Indiana Jones. And so there, the Russians being on their heels, there are a few areas, namely the GCC countries, Saudi Arabia and the others, who have been negatively impacted financially by Israel and Iran being at each other's throats and that back and forth, and Iran needing Israel to stop existing. When the Saudi, quite frankly, all kind of beliefs about religious orthodoxy aside, and the fact that these 2 big sites are in Saudi Arabia, the Saudi royal family is a bunch of hedonists that have more in common with Vladimir Putin and the Trumps than they do with the Ayatollah, for example. And so they, while the economy of the Middle East has been like, pizza or sex, even when it's not great, it's still really good. There has been a cap, a glass ceiling on the economics of the Middle East because of the Strait of Hormuz, because of this, cutthroat back and forth between Iran and its proxies, not just with Israel, but the Houthis in Yemen are really aimed at Saudi Arabia. The support for Iran of Assad and others was about getting Captagon, this drug, flowed into the Middle East so they could basically build a wealth cartel on this particular drug, which I'm sure they're cooking up like fucking Breaking Bad in Russia right now as another income stream to try and fund the war effort to replace oil. But Iran's fuckery in the region had enemies everywhere, and you can see by how they're striking out against everybody. And those guys are more than happy to take advantage of a moment where Israel and the United States will solve their problem for them. And there is a reality that I do not see expressed, largely because I think of October 7th and Israel's war in Gaza that has put a PR target on Israel's back this entire time, and that because they have the most kinetically, as far as being close by and at indirect military confrontation with Iranian proxies this entire time, that your fixation obviously goes there. We're there to help Israel. This is certainly where Tucker Carlson and others have gone, because it's kind of the dumb veneer over the whole thing. And there's certainly benefits that Israel will get from this. There's no question. It's certainly true that Netanyahu wants this. It's certainly true that Trump wants to look like a buddy to Netanyahu, and his ties and between him and Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, they view this as a team sport. However, the final go-ahead really didn't happen until MBS talked to Donald Trump, until the Saudis signed off on it. And they have more to gain financially than Israel does. I think Israel has a security concern and sort of a cultural tip that they want that's primary, but economically, they're not going to expand to fill the void in the Middle East. The Saudis are. The UAE is. The Qataris will. And so the GCC countries, all of those guys have more to benefit from Iran being a thing of the past, at least in its form, and going back to a Shah-like system, basically becoming Jordan. This is the goal. So the GCC countries want someone, not them, namely the U.S. and Israel, because then we can take all the terrorist heat after the fact from the diehards and the dead enders. If we'll do this job for them, they would love for Iran to become Jordan. Jordan was, of course, this, a split country at odds with Israel, and now it's a monarchy, a parliamentary monarchy, and has been relatively stable for a very long time. And that's what they want. And that's what they're hoping happens on the back of American dead, on the back of Israeli dead. And they're very happy to watch us kick each other. And in the same way that like Russia would move into Mossad and then also move into the Iranian proxies, feeding money to both sides, they were more than happy to see us running around trying to, playing whack-a-mole with terrorism and, trying to limit Israel's retaliatory strikes with our arms. It's a very busy thing. You could think of the news cycle that's been eaten up by that. Think of the material wealth that has been destroyed. Think of the human lives that are gone because of that shit. That whole thing, just step back from it, serves as an amazing smokescreen for Russia. You had no idea how to party in the back. I don't know. My hair's just long. It's not a mullet. It's actually long on the sides too. Mullet would be short on the sides, be like this, I guess. I guess I could put it behind my ears and it would have, there you go. But no, this is actually, it doesn't take much to distract me, right? Okay, so, I am very fluffy today, it's true. I cut some of the dead, like the split ends and did a trim up and it's coming back nicely. All right, so, couple things. I got some time. Before Tara shows up, I want to address a couple of things that you're going to see over the next look. Okay, gas prices surge amongst is Trump war. $3.45 is the current one. It's going to keep going up. You could argue that this is exactly the reason. It will also, if there's a perception, and this is, this will be months from now, there could be an idea that if we can do this all at once, and we rip this off like a Band-Aid, and we destroy the regime, and by August, we allow Iran to sell oil again because we like the leadership, like Venezuela. The oil glut we were already in, on top of this new supply being freely open to the world, will send oil prices into a tailspin. And so what you do is you call your buddies and go, we're going to do this. It's going to fuck up oil prices for a little while. So invest in it. And then you want to get out by July. Because that's the absolute end of when we think we can stretch this shit. And if you get out by then, the prices are going to cadaver because there's already too much oil, and it's, barrel of oil is going to go to $20 and probably stay there. So this is your last chance to make, because there is no way to make profit on a declining oil demand over time. It just becomes a shitty investment when there are better things to put your money into. So if you wanted one last hurrah to make money out of oil, this would be a good way to manufacture it. If you wanted to, artificially create a supply-demand problem in a situation where we have too much supply and not enough demand, and demand is declining, this is how you do it. Middle East war, big one. A little bit won't do it, as we saw before. It's almost like they were testing the market reaction in the bombing last year. So if you want that, if you want to, one last time to okay, guys, put your money in, it's going to spike, and then start selling futures around June, right? And then we want the price to be down by the midterms to almost nothing. That's why you strategically do this. If you think it's going to work, this is what you do. No matter how high it gets, if you can make it crash down below the other number, it'll look like a temporary war tax that's, was good for America and Israel and whatever. And the right will clamor about it, and you'll hear, I'm sure Glenn Beck will do a an upside of exactly what I'm saying 2 days from now after he hears it and use this as a spin. And I'm sorry to give these assholes ideas, but this is exactly where they think this is going to go. The other thing is the Trumps have invested in a drone company that isn't a real drone company. It just swallowed up 3 other drone companies. And what's the center of drone technology in the United States? Where would that be? Well, it's a little company in, where is it? Into the Gap has stepped Power Us or Power US, Powerus. I'm going to go with a West Palm Beach, Florida-based company formed last year that has since bought 3 smaller drone firms and is targeting monthly production of more than 10,000 units for a $1.1 billion procuring contract into 2027. The U.S. government is going to be buying drones from everywhere it possibly can to fill the gap it has until it settles out on who has the best ones or which way they're going to go, or if they end up building them in-house and moving to a more, I don't know, civil-based workforce where we actually have our own factories for this, right? And then, by the way, this is the company. Power Us, Power Air, Airborne Autonomy for Defense and Critical Infrastructure. This is their website. These are their systems they sell: the X-Fold Dragon H100, the H500, and the H1000. Dun dun dun, with X and Dragon and cool names. If it wasn't a drone, it'd be a sports drink. Also I would argue, AI-made website of horseshit. Every X-Fold platform runs a proprietary XNav AI flight and operation system, enabling real-time decision-making. What? Aren't all decisions real-time? Are they like decision action taking from decisions that, never mind. Risk prediction. So how do you, I guess you can make real-time decisions about risks that haven't happened yet? Like, holy shit, wait. Run that by me again.
Dum, 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 dum.
This is real-time decision-making, risk prediction.
Oh, hello there.
And full mission autonomy. So basically a wind-up killing machine, I guess, that can make up its own fucking mind about who's a target and who, I don't know, the kid looks sketchy to me. Real-time decision-making, risk prediction, pre-flight and in-flight safety analysis. You mean object avoidance, you fucking tit? That all, like, consumer drones have? Wow. Where'd you guys think of that? Terrain following. My goodness. What will they think of next? Oh, here. Object avoidance. AI-based obstacle detection and response. Isn't that the same thing, basically? Instead of pre-flight? I don't know, whatever that means. Like, sorry, it knows what limbs are going to be in the way before it leaves. What the? Beyond visual line of sight operation, which... Yeah, farm drones have that. DJI drones all have it. Fleet management, scalable multi-aircraft coordination. You mean like the big dragon shows they have in China? So basically, let me get this straight. This fancy new company of Don and Eric's has all the bells and whistles of every other fucking drone company on Earth. And no more. It is literally nothing special. So that makes sense that it's these two dipshits, because they're just cashing in on the American taxpayer and offering that the American taxpayer no more than anyone else would. Minimum viable product, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I want to play something for you. One on our side of the news thing that I would like fixed. This story about the explosive devices thrown at Mamdani's residence, near Mamdani's residence. Explosive device thrown at protest outside Demstar's home, allowing at protest to do a lot of the heavy lifting here. Someone threw it at the protesters. The protesters were anti-Islam, racist. They were protesting him. Maggots showed up to protest Mamdani, basically, and someone threw a bomb at them. They did not bring a bomb to throw at his house. They did not bring a bomb. Anti-Muslim maggot people don't do this. You don't need to get between a dust-up civil war and pretend that some asshole that did something wrong did. It's stupid. You can be against like rioting and the burning down of businesses and the attacking of police officers, no matter who does it. You could do that. And you also, this is just fucking stupid. Someone threw a shitty makeshift incendiary device. They're not quite sure what it was. Sounded like a Molotov cocktail, but they don't really say because I think they want to discourage it. So they just, sometimes the way they described it was tossed a smoking object with a hobby fuse into the crowd at the Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City event organized by far-right activist Jake Lang. It struck a barrier and extinguished itself near the officers. So somebody threw it in there. Now, is there a possibility, children, my people, is there a possibility that they threw it at themselves? That somebody came there acting like they were against the anti-Islam people and they're on the left and they threw it? Or was it a real Antifa wannabe that threw it because fuck these people and they should deserve to die? We will find out. But what is abundantly clear is that it was not thrown by those people at his house. And the assumption around the headlines is specifically that. And it does us no good. Because those kind of lies are the ones that get rolling and build animosity to a level of violence with no off-ramp. Okay? Because imagine that sits around in your head like, they threw a fucking firebomb. Like they showed up at his house and tried to firebomb his house. Like, you see how that starts rolling forward? And then eventually it becomes another brick in the wall or in the foundation of there's only one way to handle these people. This is what the right has been doing. The right has been doing a ton of this shit. Ignoring Jan 6ers, focusing on, stuff that happened during George Floyd, not separating rioters from protesters. We can't fall into that because that road always ends in the same place. At some point, the wind up gets to the point where we can't talk to these fucking people anymore. They're going to firebomb your fucking house. Like, that's how these lies get rolling. And it's really important to not let them. There are plenty of reasons to dislike these folks. There are plenty of reasons to question their actions, their policies, push back on them, and a bunch of things. And there's always a reason for self-defense in the moment if you're in a situation, your personal self, to do something about it. But the ratcheting up is anti-democratic, and it is specific to that purpose. Wedging people apart into increasingly more violent rhetoric is a tool to undermine real truth in conversation. So in these stories, and they will come up, and they will both be against our side of the aisle and their side of the aisle. Tap your brakes. That's all I'm asking. Maybe you will find out later that it was exactly what you thought, but you lose nothing by waiting for more information and clarity. Okay? And I would always remind you, read the yeah but. The third paragraph of any story, or fifth paragraph if it's a color publication, is the yeah but. They'll tell you that this happened, and oh my God, and this happened. Yeah, but it might not have been that as well. That's the editor stepping in and going, we can't verify these things and these things. And then back to the kind of incendiary talk of it to make it exciting and make it a story. The story will have a yeah but. Okay? Always watch for that. Look for the yeah but in any news story. It's crucial to your understanding of the issue and of your dissection of how the person you're reading or listening to, how they handle details that do not fit their narrative or their idea. And in the 24-hour news cycle, and in certainly even the online newspaper 24-hour news cycle, you're going to see a shit ton of that. And, engagement for engagement's sake. Okay? And the problem is lies can build on perceived grudges and create a tornado of animosity that gets very violent very quickly. Okay? So this is crucial. And all I'm really asking for you to do is be engaged in the stories you read. Right? Fred Bear. No doubt. Okay? Just be engaged in the news you're taking in. If you're bothering to take it in, be engaged. You don't have to question everything. No one starts over it. Is gravity a real thing? Every day, that's one of the stupidest fucking things. Question everything. Everything? That's fucking exhausting. I got shit to do. Why do we call it a dishwasher? Just fucking wash the dishes. Can we get on with this, please? Right, okay. People who question everything often have already moved on and are basically like throwing little like mines in your way to busy you so they can get ahead. Do you ever notice how many like rich, second generation rich kid types will say that shit and then operate on autopilot in almost every aspect of their life? Just fuck it up. Send my lawyer after him. You see what I mean? So, I wasn't talking to you, Siri. Thank you.
Okay.
She's getting much better. All right. So before our dear friend Tara Dublin shows up in the next couple minutes, and make sure that we're on the. Make sure I think she has the right one. I'm going to make sure it should be the same link we used, but I'm going to give it to you again just in case we haven't passed it on or she has an old one. Just in case. Make sure it's good. I want to show you a clip that I actually thought was so stupid it must be AI. I had a moment where I was like, oh fuck. This is fairly obviously horseshit. And it's not. This is Tucker Carlson defining what unconditional surrender means, because Trump said he wants unconditional surrender. And the reason is because he wants World War II level history behind him. He wants to be seen as somebody like like the unconditional surrender of the Japanese. And that's why some people think there's, like Fuentes thinks there's like a 10% chance he'll use a nuke in Iran because he wants to reset the world order with him at the beginning of it. That there will be, instead of, AD, it'll be AT now after Trump, right? And with maggots, it kind of already is. But let's listen to Tucker Carlson's definition of what unconditional surrender means to everyone who hears it.
Unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter if they want. And everyone knows that. And that has been, if there's one consistent lesson of history, it means unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter. Everyone can feel that. That's like the most atavistic instinct there is. And so to avoid that, people will do anything.
All right. Yeah. I was like just fucking wow. Now, beyond the fact that is clearly how he thinks the world should run. If he was in charge, that's what that would mean. Hit him, boys. Because it's how it is. It's what that means. I mean, obviously, that's what that means, right? It's what it means. But think of somebody who thinks that of our soldiers, of our troops, that when everybody hears, unconditional surrender, I think a lot of us are concerned that he means to nuke the place. because he wants a replay of Japan. But Tucker Carlson says it literally means our troops, American troops, men and women, by the way, and I guess Israelis as well, are going to rape their way across Tehran. And that's how everybody understands unconditional surrender. And therefore, the Iranians are going to fight as if they're going to, that's what they're fighting for, is the honor of their women and their daughters. And to him, I would say, now do Ukraine. Because the Russians, who he supports, sent rape squads into that country on purpose, has called for the unconditional surrender, the non-existence of Ukraine. And he's still on their team. Joining us right now, our dear friend who's been sorely missed, Tara Dublin, who does indeed rock. Hello. How are you?
Hi. Am I coming in clear from here in Portland, Oregon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, obviously.
Still not a crater. Still not a crater. Still not on fire.
I have to say, I don't believe you.
Goodbye, Portland. You twisted now.
It's gone. Yeah.
Where's the harbor? Where's the gal?
Well, yeah. But yeah.
Hi, Sparklers. Hi, Sparklers. Thank you, Sparklers, who reached out and were like, "When are you coming back?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, when they have time. When they have time.
We've had time, but
when.
you've been busy too, young lady. No?
Really, no.
All right. Well, we'll reconvene. All right. Well, let's.
Do you want to get caught up, or do you want to talk about the shitstorm?
Well, I mean, I think the purpose of the shitstorm is to keep people from getting caught up. And I pointed out at the beginning about how the timing on this as to why now has as much to do, I would argue, with the Katie Johnson reports, the 302s, 3 of them being redacted of the 4. And the news that was calling around, who found out about it and were checking on her account of things, and were verifying a lot of what she said, and were certainly calling the White House last week and going, "Hey, we're going to run a story about this, and we want to see if Trump was he anywhere near this place at this time? Does he have records that he was not in New York at that moment that would undercut her claim, or not in Palm Beach at that time to undercut her claim?" And of course, their answer was the same as Noam Chomsky's: "None of your business. It's all bullshit." And so that's as much a reason to start this shit as any, I would say.
Well, I would say that I have been circulating an excerpt of Katie Johnson's testimony that I recorded in July 2024 since then. And it has never gone the viral way it should have. Still hasn't been played from the House floor. It's the same testimony everybody's talking about now. Mm-hmm. It's just, I did it. And I recorded it as straightforwardly as I could. Because, from doing voiceovers, that if you can try to take the emotion out of something, you can let the listener make up their own mind.
Yep.
And I tried to read it as like one of those commercials, like, find out if Ozempic is right for you. But the details are so horrific that I kept crying, and I had to keep stopping and doing it again. And it's less than 2 minutes, and I've put it on all of my socials repeatedly. And it's about and it's the point of the testimony, or her complaint, or whatever you want to call it, MAGA hair splitting, semantic argumenting people. She talks about her and Maria Doe getting slapped in the face by Trump and getting cash thrown at them. And so what happened in this excerpt,
have an abortion.
They both were right. Well, so in this excerpt, they were forced to perform a lesbian sex act in front of him. Then both of them were forced to give him a blowjob, so that couldn't have taken long. But he also complained about their performances because, a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old just really haven't honed their oral skills just yet. And then he refused to wear a condom when he raped them, which is a really important detail, because if you look throughout the complaints against Trump throughout history, they all said he never wanted to wear a condom. Stormy said so. Other people have said so. So that tracks. And so they cried and worried, and they said to him, what are we going to do if we get pregnant? And he threw cash at them and said, go get a fucking abortion.
Right.
That's the excerpt. It's, it's delivered from the complaint itself. I encourage people to share it because it is still way worse when you hear it, because people can scroll past content they don't want to read. MAGA doesn't read. They don't want to believe anything they're told anyway, but it is a fact. And it's just, that's what it says in it. And I know it's terrible. And we have found out even worse things since I recorded that. And it's monstrous and it's unspeakable. And American service people are dying because Trump raped children. And when you put it as like straightforward and as insanely as that, because it's true, it makes you feel like a crazy person when you say it out loud, but it is true.
Well,
you're asking why the timing? Because they have run out of options. Epstein's never going away.
Yeah.
What's one way? Oh, well, if we kill everybody, then they can't read the Epstein files.
Yeah, it reminds me of that. If anybody's ever watched Blackadder, there's an episode called Bob, which is about him falling in love with his manservant, who's actually a girl in disguise, and he thinks he's turning gay because he doesn't know why he wants to sleep with his manservant, and it's because she's female. And at one point, he goes to the wise woman, and he's like, he looks for a solution. She's like, number one, kill Bob. And he's like, never, I can't do it. Kill yourself. Anything else? And she's like, kill everyone in the whole world so nobody knows. And it's like, I keep thinking about that shit during this. Now, I would also like to say that there are very few situations where a person with as much freedom as the SCOTUS has given someone like Trump would feel trapped in a single issue circumstance. Because in many ways, and maybe it's because this cycle they don't feel like they can outrun it before the midterms, but it's still, he doesn't ever have to see the inside of a jail cell or any real comeuppance. He could just let everybody else burn down about it and eventually just live on a golf course in Saudi Arabia, which I think is the goal. It's the new Arizona. Is that it has to, because he could, if it was just the Epstein files, he could throw Pam Bondi out, and then he could bring somebody else in, like another Bill Barr, and it will be somebody like that. He's at the point where he would fire Pam Bondi and replace her with Alex Acosta. I swear to God, it's that fucking dumb. Yeah. But the idea is that how do I punt this? Because all I got to do is punt it to within 2028, one more year before that campaign starts. In his mind, I'm just saying, as a single issue.
Yeah, no, I know.
And it'll go away because he thinks he's got the power over that. Now his followers don't, and the tide has changed. And I think you're absolutely right. He can't outrun it, but he still thinks he can to some degree. But he knows he can't outrun.
He's delusional.
He can't outrun it, and rising prices, and home affordability and healthcare at the same time. And he certainly can't achieve the PNAC goals that he agreed to do because he wants, the partners in the Middle East that signed onto that shit in the 90s, namely the Saudis and these other guys, who were all for PNAC. They weren't going to get knocked over. Iran was, Syria was, all their enemies were, and that's what they've been carrying out. Those guys couldn't wait any longer. This dust up, especially Jordan, shit lands on them all the time when Iran hits Israel and back and forth. So they were so he's got 3 time clocks running out at the same time, and so the biggest what it gives him is drive up oil prices, make yourself a war hero and a war president, so people won't change horses midstream, and you can blame the cost of living increases on oil for the time being and go, they'll come down because you were saying they'd come down by summer or by spring or by yesterday or by the month before, and they haven't. So you can start fresh. We're like, well, the oil fucked up everything. If COVID hadn't come along, everything was gonna be awesome. So we'll start with, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I mean, in a way, yes. But then also Lindsey Graham saying he's been flying back and forth to Israel, having all of these secret meetings for the last couple of months. So I think that they have been planning some sort of fuckery. But I also think that they thought the Epstein file thing would be done by now. And I think that they were planning to do hinky shit. I mean, we've always known that Trump and Jared and Netanyahu want to flatten Gaza and turn it into the Atlantic City of the Middle East. That's no secret. So that was all part of it. I think that they also thought that by the time they got to put plan into like the next phase, we would, as a nation, as a planet, moved on from Epstein, and nothing would have held them back,
Right.
because they would have shown this force. But
It's all
Epstein is
Massey's
not
fault.
only not, well, I mean, to his credit, he's like one of the lone slices of cheese standing alone. Democrats are acting correctly around this, and Republicans keep dropping like flies out of Congress. So sooner or later, they're going to be losing their majority, and it might happen before the midterms. I mean, if Tony Gonzalez is forced to resign, and then we also have Nancy Mace is currently under investigation for lying on her expense report. And if they yank, and by the way, she's going to lose either way. She's gone either way.
Yeah.
Because she's not going to win her South Carolina governor's race with the pedophiles endorsement. She keeps talking about the Epstein files, but she doesn't say Trump is in them, and it drives me fucking nuts. And she's going to lose her seat because she's so focused on the governor's race that she's not thinking about, she hasn't resigned her seat, but there are a bunch of people who are gunning for her seat on both sides of the aisle. So, you know, there's every chance that they could lose their House majority before we get to the midterms. That would be beautiful, because if that happens, then they can start, you know, doing some real shit. Now, one thing that we've talked about on the show previously is, like, I have a direct line to my senator, Ron Wyden.
Yeah.
And his office. And that's only gotten better over the last couple of months. He's so great. He's, you know, he does his town halls and he shows up for people and he answers their questions as hard as they are. And he listens to people yell at him. But one of the things that I asked him about, because I had talked to him about the tariff thing and small businesses and whatever, but I also asked him about Epstein, because as you might know, he's the ranking Democrat on Senate Finance. And and we're on the brink of war for this bullshit. And so I said to him the last time I saw him, which was last weekend, I said, do you think, because of what's happening with Epstein, all this horrific stuff, and do you think there's a point where Republicans are really going to be forced to step up and, you know, get Trump out of there? And he said, if we are stuck in Iran long enough, yes. He said yes, because this is something, and it was like the day we woke up to the news that he had bombed Iran. So everything was brand new, and my senators still didn't have all the intel. But what he said was, and what he knows is, every Republican starts a war overseas about oil. Every single one of them.
Yep.
They always lose. They drive up the prices over here. Everybody gets collective amnesia about it the next time a Republican runs, and it's fucking bullshit. So what my senator said, to like provide some optimism, because we always try to do that, he knows a war like this is incredibly unpopular, especially when there's like no real concrete reason for it, and they've changed their reasons like 12 times in the last 72 hours or whatever. But what he said was, when the gas prices really start going up, that's when Republicans are going to not be able to ignore it anymore. Because it's just fact. Like, you want to ignore that he raped kids, that's on you. You can't ignore the rising gas prices and that oil is $100 a barrel right now. Like, you can't.
Yeah,
so that's where it'll hit. Okay. It'll always hit in the money.
It's 117, and
117.
Yeah,
all right.
And the national average for price. Let's see. Price of gas has skyrocketed in the past week in response to President Trump's war in Iran. The national average for a gallon of gas hit $4.44, according to GasBuddy.com, up more than 51 cents from a week ago before the war began. Now, what you'll notice in that is that it was still $3.90, nowhere near the $1.89 he was lying about. So there's a problem Trump has had, I think, that eventually he's going to run out of track on. Which is his lie is eventually always bores him. Eventually he gets bored of whatever bullshit. I mean, we got 5,000. 5,000. It's like 7,000 now. Some people even say 10,000. I made a sketch about it on Sexy Liberal when we were doing the COVID shows, when we were doing the digital ones. About Trumponomics, because on Sesame Street, because all you do is take any number and then you start doubling it regularly because you're bored of the old number, or it doesn't sound impressive enough to you because you're a billionaire or you're talking in billion-dollar terms to other people. And so, and everything you cut at, that's why we got 1,000% cheaper drugs and that kind of stuff. Like, he doesn't understand how you can raise something over 100%, but you can't lower it over 100% because you're dealing in percentages. And so it is per 100, and that's how math works. And so his inability to like see that way, and it's even articulated as being cut in half, cut by a third, cut by a fifth, cut by 1/16. Like, that sounds just as impressive, but it's too much work for his fucking brain. So $4.45 is really bad, but it's still only 50 cents higher, and that means it was almost $4 recently, and it's been going up in over time because there is no drill baby drill. There just isn't any to be had, and prices are continuing to rise. We've got 2.9% inflation, even with the weights he's been putting on it. So I think he's looking I think this is besides the Epstein smokescreen part of it. A big part of this is a great way to attempt, anyways, to basically create your own little new version of mini COVID, to fuck up the world economy so much nobody blames you for your recession. The U.S. entered a recession in 2020. In January of 2020, before COVID hit, we entered a recession because of Trump's unpaid tax cuts and spending that he was doing and how it had fucked up the markets and his tariff attempts and his trade war with China. We started one January 2020. Nobody noticed because the whole world's economy got fucked by COVID. He was so lucky.
That's correct.
He was so lucky.
Really, I mean, and he's such a moron because here was an opportunity for him to be, a hero and save millions of lives by telling the world what he told Bob Woodward. And Lenny saved the lives of millions of registered voters. But he didn't. He didn't because he's a moron. And then Joe Biden came along and not only lifted our economy out of a pandemic depression, but the entire global economy as well.
Yep.
But the MSM didn't report on that because they were like, he's drunk and run again. Anyway, I just want to take a quick break. Treva in the chat says, I need to turn up the saturation on my camera as a next to HAL, your cover for being an actual vampire is blown. I'm just this pasty and I don't know how to change any saturation on a camera. So you're stuck with the whitest Jewish woman in Portland is what you're stuck with. This is as good as it's gonna get here. Sorry. Anyway, thank you though. I mean, you look fabulous. The tan and healthy and strapping. And
thank you.
Looking, whatever. There's no sun in Portland. Don't people know this?
That's right.
That's just that.
Okay. I'm raising your gamma a little bit, see if that helps, on my end, but not yet so far. It's just the nature. Yeah, there's a little bit more color in it. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. Trump said, so
that means a lie is coming, because any sentence that starts with Trump said.
It's, or something just, quite frankly, bullshitty. At this point, he said... he called in, I think he either said it to kill Dillweed on Fox and Friends, or he read it from something else. He goes, here's exactly what Trump said. These ships should go through the Strait of Hormuz and show some guts. There's nothing to be afraid of. They have no navy. We sunk all their ships. Okay.
Is he playing Battleship and Risk at home or something?
Couple of things. The way the closing of the Strait of Hormuz would work tactically for everybody who it might be new to this part of it, because you've heard the threat for a long time, but how it happens is the question. The way they would do it is by mining the seafloor and then having magnetic mines that float below the surface, above the bottom of the floor, but as a ship goes by, they would attach and then explode. And this is fairly standard. They don't need a giant battleship or even a Coast Guard size ship to do it. You can do it with, you can drop these things with fucking speedboats. They have a civilian watercraft looking group. They can even mask one of their oil tankers to go through and drop them out of the bottom on their way out. And then that boat just never comes back through because it would get blown up as well. The threat of these things is not because somebody's going to fire, there's a boat in the area that's going to fire on these oil tankers as they go through. It's because they're going to mine it, and then they have missiles that come from far away. So they can shoot from land because it's not very big, it's 30 kilometers wide. They could shoot from land and hit boats going through there, or scare them off, or wound members of the crew. They could hit them with multiple drones. Again, the Shahed drones are enough. They've hit airports in Dubai. They sure as fuck can hit a boat less than 30 kilometers off their coast. So it has nothing to do with the fucking Navy. And it never did. And it never will.
You don't really expect Cadet Bone Spurs to understand the intricacies of war, do you? He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He just wants shit blown up. He doesn't want to understand. He doesn't read his daily briefings. He has no fucking clue. Mm-hmm. He doesn't understand anything about anything. All he knows is things blow up. He doesn't care who dies. He wouldn't even take off his fucking hat at the dignified transfer. There's nothing dignified about him, okay? Mm-hmm. You might as well have slapped a giant bumper sticker on his ass saying, "I'd rather be golfing," because he has no interest in the minutia of policy, or why people are mad at each other, or why we're at war, or why that region is historically troubled. None whatsoever. He's a bottom line me dude. How much is this putting in my pocket? How much is this putting in my bank account? I don't care who lives. I don't care who dies. I don't know what prices are because I don't have to pay for shit. Mm-hmm. I don't go grocery shopping. I don't drive a car. I don't have to pay for gas. He is so, inured of anything that resembles reality. He is sheltered and always has been from the daily lives of regular people. So his lack of interest in it has always been an issue, like from the outset. Because when you don't understand the basics of how your government works and no interest in civics or policy or whatever, like it's astonishing that anybody who has this little knowledge mm-hmm. of how the government works, how the military is supposed to operate, how your foreign policy matters on the global, like no interest whatsoever. And you go back to something that I shared the other day, is that video from going back to what all of the Republicans were saying about him in 2016 before the Russians hacked the DNC and mm-hmm. RNC servers, and then what they started saying afterwards. And it's infuriating, especially in the context of what we're living in right now, because every single one of them became compromised one way or the other just a little bit after they made these public statements. Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, everybody who's up his ass now, they knew. And everybody's forgotten because of the slow boil in the media. You and I haven't forgotten, and your audience hasn't forgotten. But the people who are now in charge of the media don't want you to remember that stuff. That's why they're in charge of the media. And that's what you and I talked about extensively before the election, was the danger in letting them control the narrative, because every single day they can change the narrative. Why we're in Iran, where's Netanyahu, what's happening in Gaza. I don't believe anything he says. I don't believe anything coming from this White House, and nobody should. And that's a horrific thing to say as an American citizen, especially one who's, scraping out a livelihood telling the truth about the news, is that this misinformation, disinformation campaign that has been so egregiously successful, everything he does comes with a body count. And the last thing I'll say about this before throwing it back to you, everyone needs to remember that Donald Trump has never been and never will be a take one for the team guy. He always has been and always will be. The team has to take one for me. We're the team.
Agreed.
That has to take it for him. And that's not how we should live as a nation.
It struck me as particularly ironic, in a very dark and dismal kind of a way, that everything they say about Donald Trump was true of Charlie Kirk. In that if you listen to how they talk, and these are people on their own side, which is the ironic part. If it was about somebody else, they wouldn't give a fuck at all, right? But Trump, like, they literally shot him in the face, right? They keep saying he clipped his ear with a piece of glass from his teleprompter and killed one of his followers, which none of them can name anymore. They've been memory hold. The injured ones, like, I can shrug, right? But Charlie Kirk has been there's been a bunch of wedge issues since July of last year that have increasingly created, a distance between him and MAGA. one that will, in some ways, each of which could only be healed by some sort of jingoistic lineup behind the boss moment. Each one of them on their own, Epstein files, affordability and his plan for tariffs, whatever it is, the answer has been trust in Trump. He knows the path, and he may not follow you into the promised land. He's not going to get into heaven, but he's going to lead you to the gates, and you can walk on through. And each one of these is sort of true of that sales pitch. On an accumulative level, it's very difficult to carry all three of those as a trust me bro, using the trust me bro defense. And the Charlie Kirk thing, I'm sure you've seen some of the Candace Owens shit and like this crazy 5-part series she's doing about who is the real Erica Kirk, and that she was engaged in child trafficking, and that she was part of fucking MK Ultra's plan to control the conservative movement and all this stuff. And I gotta say, I don't really give a shit what cherry-picked truths she is using to turn into this fruit salad of nonsense, in the same way that I don't give a shit about the ones that Tucker Carlson uses against the U.S. and Israel to defend Russia because the goal is there, whatever. Because you can, in an open society, you will always have plenty of ammunition against your own side. It's my argument for why no society with an oral tradition is ever the bad guy, because it's real easy to get rid of your but the minute you start writing down history, even if you're the victor who writes the story, eventually you're going to start writing down your fuck-ups too, because you want to learn from them, or you got to be criticized, or that's the law, and it'll catch up with you. There's always plenty of shit to say. But you have to look at the motivation of why somebody goes, why is that detail and this detail, and you put this detail, and Alex Jones is the poster child for this shit. But Charlie Kirk's death has been turned into a religious cause amongst maggots, by and large. And this keeps showing up on X as one of the things. Oh, interesting. Charlie Kirk post. No nukes for Iran, no troops on the ground, no U.S. troops dead, no regime change, no nation building, no war. President Trump with a historic master class. And then look at the one right underneath it from Beanie Baby. From the Beanie Baby. When Trump ran for office, he explicitly campaigned on waging war in Iran to save the Iranian people and spread democracy. That is a ironic tweet, I suppose, from the launch of the war. Point being, though, is that there's been a shit ton of Charlie Kirk, would be spinning in his grave right now if it wasn't for this. Oh, please. Stop it. No. I get it. We don't have to care about what Charlie Kirk would say about any particular issue, but understand that maggots sure as fuck do. And this has been a bellwether, and this stacks on top of all the reasons they think that Israel or the U.S. or the fucking army or whoever, Erica and everybody else, killed Charlie Kirk last year, according to the Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes wing of the maggot parade. They're convinced that part of this is because Trump and the neocons and the Lindsey Grahams are planning this war. They know it's going to happen, and that last year's one-off bombing was not a one-off bombing. And even if they stop short, I would argue now, do 3 weeks and say, we've done it, we'll be back in there in June again, because they've realized you can't just maybe go and stay, but you could hit them all the time. It could just be a fucking, you're like weeding a garden. Just fucking fly over and drop more pesticide. That's literally how they could view this. And Trump, like the maggots will fucking clap like harbor seals. Right. And then how soon after that did he die? Because also one of the last interviews Charlie Kirk gave. Okay, so one of his final interviews was with Megyn Kelly. And they talked about the Epstein files. And Charlie Kirk said he wanted the full unredacted Epstein files released. Yep. He wanted everybody exposed. And he said he didn't care if Trump was in there. He wanted all of it out. And she agreed. And it's out there and you can find it and it's real. Yep. And then like days later, he was shot. And that, I don't want to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole. I find that timing hanky. To give a call back to what you were talking about, sketchy, because we don't have all of the information. Again, just like in Butler, no medical report released, no autopsy report released. Where's he buried?
Nobody knows. So
Yeah.
and remember, at the very base, Charlie Kirk was a podcaster who dropped out of junior college.
Mm-hmm.
That's who he was. Okay? And he got elevated to the point where flags were flown at half-mast and his fucking face is on the Department of Education right now.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
His fucking face. Charlie fucking Kirk, who hates Jews and said terrible things about black people and people of color and the LGBTQ community. His face is hanging between two people of color who are known for education. Makes me want to scream, and it's on purpose. It's their way of fucking with us, and it makes me very angry. But I'm using my mommy says it's time to leave the store voice, because otherwise I'll just start screaming and not stop. So the Charlie Kirk that's an easy trigger, right? That's an easy trigger distraction as well. But when they do that, circle it back to Epstein, because the timing is weird. He says Epstein files should come out. Oh no, he's dead. Then there's Erica Kirk with her hand in JD Vance's hair at the next Turning Point event.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that? And who's really the father of Usha's fourth baby? I don't know. I'm just asking questions. I'm asking questions as to why Usha and Caroline got pregnant at the same time. Just timing of things just make you go, remember that song, Things That Make You Go,
Yes.
Just as one of those. You could have a segment like that, because literally everything that they do makes you go, wait a minute. Like when
Are you saying that Peter Thiel might be paying them to surrogate and cover it as some sort of new royals that they want to build as part of the technocratic control of a new territorial America that they all see in their weird tech bro future? This is, by the way,
that's what that motherfucker was doing while people were getting blown up in Iran.
Yeah, and he's still wearing the same hat he wore at the dignified transfer. He didn't bother.
By the way, that was a commercial for his hat, by the way. That's a brand new hat. I read about it. It's brand new, available in his online merch store. For $55, you could buy that hat that he refused to take off of his head at the dignified transfer because he doesn't want whatever's left of the cotton candy on his head to blow away.
A douche. Like
you you go for it. Let him keep grifting you, suckers. Just let him. That bunker's not going to pay for itself that they're building under where the East Wing used to be. It's fine.
I will say there is one. There is one good piece of news, one good thing that Trump might be doing. That
I'm sorry.
Easy. I give credit where credit is due. If he's going to do something positive, I want to be able to do that, right? I want to be magnanimous in that level. Trump has said, let's see if I can find it. Trump has said that he is not going to sign any bills that come out of the Senate. Wait, hold on. That he's not going to sign any bills that come out of the Senate unless they pass the Save America Act. And I would like to say for the record, fine. I mean, they control the House and the Senate. The only things that are going to get it passed are things that Republicans want. So who are you exactly threatening with fuckery? Well, I would argue other Republicans. That this is really a threat to, like, the Senate Republicans by and large, who have real power, who will be around after he's gone, and he knows it, and are holding up. They don't want to get rid of the filibuster for the same reason Democrats don't, because it'll always come back to bite you in the ass when all it takes is a simple majority. If you think what Trump is doing is knocking over norms and bullying through shit like that, the Republicans are aware that if a Democrat had that same inclination in power and the wind at their back, they would absolutely be able to get a shit ton of stuff done that would be impossible for them to undo. And I think Democrats are afraid that Republicans, and rightly so, would be able to do damage that could not be undone in this process.
Right. Well,
so
I mean, the unfortunate thing is, like, every time a Republican shows any sort of spine, then they turn around and do something fucking weak as hell, and then you're like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, everyone was praising Tom Tillis when he was reading Christie Nome to filth, and great. Yeah, no, it's awesome to see Republicans yelling at her.
Yep.
I felt like some of it was misplaced anger, like they're mad at Trump, but they can't yell at Trump, so they're yelling at her because he's going to see it. And Tom Tillis has 1 foot out the Senate chamber door. He's retiring. He's not running for re-election. So how brave is it for him to stand up and do that when he knows that he's not going to have any repercussions from it? He's got his pension. He's not going to get, arrested. He's not, nothing's going to happen to Tom Tillis. So he can be out there being like, hey, let's talk about this flying fuck shop, shall we? And she's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. My husband's right here. I didn't do anything. I can't move my face, but I swear I'm upset. It's just like, again, I want to believe that enough of the remaining Senate Republicans who are not up for re-election, who are still going to be there past January, are not happy about the Iran conflict, whatever you want to call it, makes them look bad. All of it. I mean, everything about Trump makes them look bad because everything Trump does comes with a body count one way or the other. And at some point, I really hope that we have our version of the Nuremberg trials, because there's a lot of people who should be in a lot of trouble for what they're doing right now, what they're supporting right now, and what's happening right now.
Yeah,
I want to believe enough of them would stand with Democrats to finally impeach and remove Trump. I would love to believe that because of what's happening in Iran and the gas prices and those things.
Yeah, well, it isn't at that boiling point yet, and there is a window of gas prices and costs and the futures that are. And so much volatility because nobody knows what the fuck Trump is going to do and how long this is going to last and if he's going to do it again and all this kind of shit, that I feel like they're afraid to step out, from under the umbrella because they're not sure if it's still raining or not. And that's part of why he does what he does and how he does it, is that he will, he'll jumpstart stuff and then blow it off. And then stuff. It's almost like, Don't Ask, Don't Tell is a great example of why you can't do it and then undo it. Because once people have admitted that they're gay or lesbian and they are in the armed forces, if you reverse the policy, the people who were outed themselves because legally they could, can no longer un-out themselves and go back to work and not talk about it anymore because they already talked about it. They're living openly. And so the Republicans' goals in shutting that down was use Don't Ask, Don't Tell as bait to have everybody serve openly and then make it illegal for you to serve if you're gay or lesbian go back to pre-Don't Ask, Don't Tell. That's been the plan for the entire time. There is a similar issue, I think, with Republicans, and they look at that as a measure of when it's safe to come out against a policy or something like that. Is this really a turnaround? Is this really the tipping point? Are we really there yet? And that's why there's so much tepid, like, do we dare amongst them? Because if they step out too early and Trump goes, never mind, I'm not going to do the tariffs, and it doesn't affect the economy because people might have heard the big story about him turning a tariff on, but didn't hear the story about him not implementing them, which was all last summer. Anybody who came out and said the tariffs are going to fuck up the economy, a lot of average voters thought for a good period of time, we'll see how long that sticks, that the tariffs are on and it didn't really affect the economy that much. It didn't crash things. Prices didn't go up 300% like they said they were going to. That's because they were never implemented. But if you didn't hear they were never implemented and only heard from Trump, tariffs are going to happen. They're happening right now. They're awesome. We're doing them. We're doubling them. We're tripling them. And you're not really feeling them yet. Not on that level anyways. You're feeling them a little, but not to the extent that the people who warned you. Well, the reason you're not feeling them to the extent you were warned was because they didn't happen to the extent you were warned. But if you didn't hear that part, you think Trump did this giant thing. Everybody was saying it's going to be terrible, and it wasn't. And they take advantage of that all the time. It's not quite the low information voter. It's that make as big a splash on the top end of this story, and then any of the mistakes bury it. Look at the big bullshit bill last year. They had to walk back like 10 parts of it, including VA cuts that were in there once they got caught. But those are, we just signed those and passed them. They were no fanfare.
Right, but he still stole $1,700 from every single American taxpayer based on his tariffs because they were arbitrary. is what we learned not that long ago. $1,700 is a lot of money. It's a lot of money for me. It's a lot of money for most people. It should be something that MAGA cares about a lot. $1,700 is a lot of money. That's money he stole from your family. That's money you could have paid for. Remember last Christmas where he was like, maybe you only get 3 pencils and 2 dolls.
Right.
Maybe it's just 1 doll. That's because he fucking stole $1,700 from you.
Yes.
And he knew that he did. That's why they were all like, hey, don't have a full Thanksgiving dinner this year. Just cut back on the sides. That's not what you want to hear. That's not what a thriving government tells you. A thriving government says, go for it. Like, shop till you drop. Stuff your fucking fat faces. We're living high on the hog. Let's go. We're thriving. That's not what's happening. Nobody who's happy about the economy says spend less, buy fewer things. They know what they're doing. It's his old con. He has always been a walking game of 3-card Monte. Always. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? You will never find where he's hiding the thing. Because he's always shuffling. If he's not talking about this, he's talking about this. If he's not talking about that, then it's over here. Oh, we're on Iran. Well, what Epstein files?
That's another.
It's always that.
Another good point in that this morning, I think J.D. Vance was doing something with the American Federation of Firefighters, the AFF, like just talking to them today. And Trump was doing that thing about college sports that day before yesterday, where he was like, when someone asked him about the Iran war, he was like, we're talking about something very important here. College, there's a lot of money happening around these things, and this is a very important issue. Almost like are you still talking about the Epstein files energy to try and bat away talk about, are you still talking about Iran, the Iran war? That's that creep, that mission creep. Right? That he is trying. They're also, one of the ways they're flooding the zone with bullshit is by acting like the Iran war is a side pocket. Most administrations, when something this extraordinary was happening, would effectively powwow and batten down the hatches, and all other priorities go in the bin for right now, because it's going to take all of our thinking caps. Now, granted, most of the administration doesn't want Trump anywhere near any of the real decisions, the tactical and strategic decisions in this situation. It's bad enough he started it, much less that he starts micromanaging the fuck out of this because he has no idea how anything works. So they probably would rather have him, and I think us as Americans would probably rather have him golfing and ignoring it and going, putting around, behaving basically like a vice president. Remember in Dave when Ben Kingsley.
Love that movie.
Ben Kingsley's the vice president, and he comes in with this like gifts from Africa, and he's like presented from the king of Burundi or whatever, and because he's got these shit jobs just going around, and Dave finally asks him for real advice and starts to listen to him because he's a decent guy and was brought on because he'd be different, whatever. Trump is doing those jobs. Trump is doing the greetings from the president of Burundi bullshit, while Wiles and fucking, I would argue, Besant is telling, and maybe Nutlick are telling Hegseth what to do. I would argue,
and don't forget about Stephen Miller.
Well, Stephen Miller, I think, is more, arguably, in charge of fucking up domestic policy and pushing for. He's almost entirely on the deportation beat, which is a failure. So with Noam gone, but I think the big he doesn't have anything to give in terms of information or tactical stuff. Nobody's going to look to his advice. Like Besant and those guys who are in oil and currency manipulation markets for a living, this is their fucking game. And they're like, imagine if you're Besant and you've been over the years. Back when you used to work for Soros or whatever, and you look at how currencies are tipping one direction or another. They just naturally do it because this happens or that happens. And then imagine if you could, imagine you're sitting there like, dude, if I could make that blow up, if I could blow that up, my holdings would go to here. That's the position they are in right now.
You know what infuriates me about Scott Bessent is that man is gay. He's married to a man. He has 2 sons, and he does not do anything to advocate for LGBTQ rights. He doesn't care that this administration doesn't want him to have rights. And so every time I catch a Scott Bessent tweet, I always respond with 2 screenshots. One is a story about Donald Trump saying that Pete Buttigieg's marriage to a man isn't real. And then the other one is my Senator Ron Wyden did a brief thread about the financial ties between American banks and Russian banks and the Epstein files. Most Americans still don't know that the U.S. Treasury Department has its own set of Epstein files.
Mm-hmm.
And they are supposed to be sharing that information with both Senate Finance and House Oversight. And Scott Bessent is not complying. He is not allowing Ron Wyden or James Comer to have full access to these Epstein files that the Treasury Department has that are incredibly damning. There are over 4,700 wire transfers that that Senate Finance discovered, and the Trump administration declined to investigate. Weird. So that's an important part of, like, Scott Bessent has been given way more power than a Treasury Secretary should have. Way more influence. Like, he's supposed to be quietly hanging out, doing the Hamilton thing, making sure that the money is cool and it's circulating right, and all of that is, all literally the checks and balances. And instead, he's running his mouth over a lot of things that the Treasury Secretary is pretty much never quoted about, asked about, doesn't have anything to do with. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, actively involved in the Epstein files cover-up. These are things that the most Americans don't know because Barry Weiss isn't going to tell them. So that's still, like, those are those stories that I wish would get out while all of this is going on, because there's multiple things to the Epstein files besides the salacious and unspeakable details. The financial, I think he's going to end up getting hit the same way as Capone, where it's going to be the financials that take him down and not, like, the horrific stuff. Mm-hmm. But either way, Scott Bessent is a criminal. And he's a traitor to the United States. And anytime he's quoted as all I think is Trump doesn't think your marriage to a man is real. What do you tell your sons? What are you going to tell your sons about this? Like, that's what I think about.
Right. Okay. And you know why you do? Because you're adorably young. You're such a young'un. You're such a...
I'm 57 next month. I'm not young.
You're
57.
You're,
it's my Heinz year. It's my saucy Heinz year where we got to make magic happen, but we'll do that in a minute.
Okay. You are young, and you are a product of your generation, young lady. And in that, and you're a product of your generation because you grew up in a period that contained what I would call the bias of or the bigotry of shared goals. And that happened during the civil rights era. It happened during suffrage. It certainly happened during Revolutionary War times, and it happens anytime strange bedfellows occur, where straight people and gay people got together to give gay people rights, or men and women got together to give women's rights, and that kind of stuff. And then over time, you recognize that the goals of some of them might be divergent because they are complete human beings. And the period by which you were fighting the same enemy gives you the illusion that there is alignment or monolithic behavior in that particular group you were siding with from the outside. So as straight people, it seems very strange that any gay person would side with someone who is against their rights and thinks that they're mentally ill and all that kind of stuff. But that's because we think their value is primary in terms of their identity, and they think their value is their identity is secondary to their primary value, which is money or power or getting their fears answered by having whoever they think of as their enemy killed on their behalf. So siding together in those situations, the assumption is, and it is its own form of bigotry, that all gay people are cut from the same cloth, and the one thing we can agree on is freedom. And it ain't. It just ain't. And and when it comes to Bessent, guarantee that fucker would trade his rights to adopt and be married out in the open because he's rich enough it wouldn't fucking matter. He could have a house and a contract drawn up between him and his partner that was sound, that gave each other power of attorney. The next best thing to being, a marriage certificate. And if you wanted to adopt children, they could do it as individuals and then share the household and whatever, right? And then give each other, insurance policy over it, and form a fucking corporation with $500 million in the bank that is technically a trust for this group of people, which is really a corporation, but it might as well be a family. And remember, Mitt Romney said corporations are people, my friend. This is partly what he was talking about. That you can incorporate and get around a lot of this shit if you don't have religious beliefs. And that was the real fight on the right, is that they just remember, it wasn't, marriage is a religious term. Civil unions, I'm fine. That's how we ended up getting there. Besson thinks he's a part of a different class. He thinks he's a part of a different class of human beings, and that is not unique to straight white dudes or African kings and military leaders or Middle Eastern sheiks or fucking Eastern European women provincial governors and mayors who are just as power hungry and oligarchical as the next. And the problem is that if you have a perceived enemy and you have a perceived ally, you can, and the threat is high enough, you can blaze right past your own, real loyalties and your own real awareness of checking who you're next to, who you're sharing intel with, and the like. And this has always been a problem, and it's never going to stop as long as humans are humans. So the issue here is that I'm not surprised that the Bessons of the world are like this. There are some who fetishize their identity as a gay person so much that they think marriage is a straight person thing, and it makes them lose their erection. I've heard them say it, and it doesn't mean they're indicative of all of them, but it certainly it fits the Peter Thiel crowd and the Besson crowd more than it fits the person who works with you at work, or that you see at the coffee shop, or that you interact with on a blue collar or white collar level, and in the rest of the 90% of the country. Those folks, that identity matters to them the same way that your identity, as a woman or as a straight person or whatever, matters to you only when it is checked. The rest of the time you're you, and this is just a facet of who you are. Your identity only matters when someone tries to check it. And in Besson's world, and this is really like the thing, nobody checks it. Nobody fucking cares. At their level, that's why these Epstein pedophile crowd are allowed to get away with it, because nobody is checking it at the door. Nobody's saying, I'm morally offended by that. Nobody. Because it's about the accumulation of mass wealth and this sort of like bunker, like they're fucking preppers. At a certain point, as long as you can hold a gun and point it out the holes and you can keep the zombies at bay, they don't give a fuck what you do on your bunk. And that's it. No. And that's that between how much money and power can we accumulate and how much fear do we have of the masses. That crowd doesn't give a shit about their identity as gay or straight or pedophile or Christian Zionist or whatever. It doesn't matter. They're all awash. They're all the same fuckers.
Yeah. I'm now writing twice a week for Raw Story.
Awesome.
Doing opinion pieces, and my most recent one is basically an open letter to the Republican Party. And again, as an atheist, it's a weird phrase to use, but it is time for them to come to Jesus. Mm-hmm. It really is. This is the moment. And you've been getting away with enabling all of this horrific behavior, these unspeakable Epstein files. People are dying now. Like, now is the time where you need to face your constituents, like, publicly, and declare you're either loyal to Trump or America. And if you choose the first one, you lose your seat immediately, because we are witnessing treasonous acts every single day. And that's another thing that we need to be checking them on, because aside from everything that you said, which I totally agree with, it's our responsibility to call out this behavior that's endangering our livelihood. And that includes the people who voted for this administration, as well as the ones who didn't. I don't know how many times I have said on the show, and I might say it every single time I've been on this show, but well before this, nobody should be dying for Donald Trump. Not one person.
Right.
Not one person for any reason whatsoever. And that I want, because me, the scrappy Gen X latchkey kid who learned how to take care of myself from like the age of 11 or whatever. Like, I wish you had the same survival instinct over there on the MAGA side, and you were able to look at this pragmatically and go, raised gas prices hurt my family. Raised food prices hurt my family. Losing my health care hurts my family. I don't care if you don't like the truth, but it's really important. Like, right now, you have to accept it. And so my whole thing was, here are the truths. I don't like them. These are the truths, though, and we have to accept them. And when Republicans finally do, that is the only way that we get our democracy back on track. So everything that the Republicans are doing is everything Trump is doing. Everything Trump is doing is what the Republicans do. They are one and the same. And that is how you win the midterms, by the way. Aside from having a strong candidate who can go out there and actually win. And as you say, the focus is always flipping red districts to purple, purple districts to blue. Keeping blue districts blue, you don't get points for that, but you do get points for moving the needle. And so part of that conversation needs to be sticking everything Trump does to the Republicans, like you took his loaded diaper off of him and put it on them. He is their fault. He is their responsibility. They're not owning the libs. They own him. He owns them. All of them together are at fault. They're trying to blame the Democrats for what's happening in Iran. They're trying to blame the Democrats for what happened to Alex Preddy and Renee Good. They're trying to blame Democrats for needing ICE agents. Like, shut the fuck up.
Well, also, okay.
Hold them accountable in the right way. Like, we have to check them. And if we keep checking them, other people will pick up on that, hopefully.
Agreed. Okay. I believe that any Republican that has any hope of recognizing that they've been flim-flammed or turning their things around, or that their alleged values have been turned on their head and used against them or whatever, will have the mental awareness to either do something about that at some point, or completely shut down and just stop voting, which is what a bunch of them are doing. There's a huge chunk of them that are, talking themselves out of voting this time. And that helps us immensely. I'd rather everybody vote, but you vote with your feet as well. So these fuckers, if we're going to have, if they have their own TYT effect, then fuck them. But when it comes to a big chunk of Trump's maggot base, and the ones that we're always contemplating, will they ever shake it? Will they ever come out from under him? Will they ever wake up to this? Part of the reason why they're so slow to do it is because they are operating on a different set of facts, or more specifically, that there is a never-ending flood of facts, and you can choose the facts aren't chosen by your search for the truth. It's by your own internal priorities, your primary fears and insecurities, and your primary desires and drivers. And those two things will make you seek out news. What's the worst thing that can happen? What's the best thing that can happen? If there's a fork in the road, let me try the best and avoid the worst. And to us, there's maybe 8 ways to go. And most of them will be relatively good, but have their own backslide, and you can never really know. To them, they increasingly, even when there are 8, they would rather there be 2. And so their decision-making matrix in their head is based on avoiding the gray areas and trying to make everything as binary as possible. And I think we also have to avoid that as best we can, because that's what true diversity is about, and it's that's why being a Democrat's harder. But in the case of a big bunch of these maggots they're going to prioritize based on fear whatever Trump has fed them along the way, to the extent they can stomach it. And it worked with immigration, but only for a while. And what they realized was, and this is, I think more than anything, is that, and I've heard this lie repeated over and over still, and it just bounces off them, which is fascinating now. 25 million, 35 million immigrants have flooded the country. That Biden let all these crazy people in and whatever. And yet, deportations are down. And even when they're rounding people up, they're finding 8 10 people nationwide that fit the bill, but the rest of the people are farm workers and roofers and hospitality workers and sous chefs and cooks and cleaners and shit like that. And their own people. And then he's like, well, we need some farm shit, so let the farmers just have an honor system. Fuck it. Just let we'll just let them pick their own. Now, if Hillary Clinton had said something like that, like every Republican's head would have exploded all at once. It would have sounded like popcorn popping in an adjacent room as you listen to the skulls exploding all over the country. But because Trump said it, they shrugged it off and forgot about it, because it helped them bury the lie that there aren't 25 to 35 million fucking lunatics running around. And the economy is kept largely in check through cheap, under-the-table labor. And until we have a real remedy for that, that's how it's gonna be. So best to look the other way. And maggots are starting to wake up to that. And what happens is, he started talking about people from the Congo, because Mexicans aren't that fucking scary to these people anymore. They used to be scary. During Reagan, they were scary as shit. During the 50s, maybe, scary as shit. Now, I don't know, it's marque numero dos. I've gotten over it. Like, you hear it on the phone, you don't care anymore. But back then, it sounded like a fucking invasion in the 90s. Now we're kind of, and it's not, it's just a portion of the populace, like the French-speaking portion of Canadian populace. You don't care. But, so he's got to ratchet it up. And again, it goes to that Trump math thing. This isn't scary enough. This isn't big enough. It isn't extreme enough. It doesn't sound sexy. We need the sequel's got to be bigger than the original, more explosions, higher body count, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And that's the concern about the Iran war for a lot of maggots, is that regime wars, if you don't stop them, in Trump world, you only have one option. It's not, you're either going to stop them, never do them again, or do them like nobody's ever done it before. America, fuck yeah, boom. Right? Yeah. And they know this about him. So part of their panic about him is that they know there will be no middle way.
Yeah.
And it's fuck on them.
Fuck
yeah,
them.
Right. So I don't think we have to worry about
Let's end with something good, though.
Yeah, okay.
We have to end with something good. All right.
So this doesn't qualify the rivers of oil that are flowing down Tehran streets. That doesn't qualify.
Although that's a visual for what the inside of everybody's brain feels like. That's how we.
That's what my neurons look like when they fire.
Exactly. So we one thing that we know is MAGA hates it when nice things happen. Period. They really hate it when nice things happen to Democrats.
Right.
So there's two things that I would like the sparklers to help with this week and going forward. Aside, like your support, whether you're paying for my Substack or not, sharing what we write, sharing our truth, sharing my raw story, sharing my Substack, sharing the link to my book, whatever, that's great. I'm trying to do something actual, real in Portland right now. I'm wearing my Low Bar Corral shirt. I've talked about my Low Bar Corral multiple times on this show. In less than a month, Bruce Springsteen is kicking off his next tour, and he's starting in Minneapolis, and then the second night is here in Portland. That seems intentional. Like, the scheduling of that seems like going from Minneapolis to Portland seems very intentional. One of the things that Low Bar is doing is we're participating in the national movement that's grown from Minnesota, the protest singing movement. And we do something called Voices of Resistance now, little side project. And we sang Streets of Minneapolis. For the first time we got together. We have a nice video of it. We would like to sing that song with the Portland Frogs and us and Bruce Springsteen at the Moda Center on April the 3rd. I grew up in New Jersey. You know this? I have this. In the town next to Springsteen's, I have never seen Bruce Springsteen play live. My mother has. That's not okay with me. She's not allowed to be cooler than me in any way. So it's my pinned. Well, I don't know what socials everybody does. This is not about what socials or lectures or whatever. I've shared it on all my socials. So Instagram and Blue Sky and Twitter, I've pinned the video. Just hit it. Just hit it up. Just share it, please. I want to try it. I have contacted CAA, which is Springsteen's management. I haven't heard back. I did drop the name of my hometown. I did lean into the Jersey thing. The venue in Portland is literally, I could walk to it. But never having seen Springsteen, we have a choral group that sings his songs. We know what it's like to live here in Portland under all of the shit that he sings about in Streets of Minneapolis. Let's just make this happen. It would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Just want to make a good thing happen. Costs you nothing but about 5 seconds of your time to share my post about Springsteen. If you want to go further and quote it and tag Springsteen, lovely. Thank you so much.
Right.
That is my ask. That is my ask. We want to bring joy and song and music and healing to the world at a time where everybody needs it. And I don't care who you voted for. Music is one of the greatest common denominators that connects us as human beings. It heals, it soothes, it sparks beautiful feelings, and it's amazing. And it's a wonderful lifeline. So again, Jersey girl wants to get in to see Springsteen. Can't afford the tickets for sure, but organically, we should all be able to, we want to sing with him.
Nice.
What it comes down to. So yeah, that's the mission, along with, continuing to tell the truth. Those are my missions.
It's a good one.
I think those are, you know what? I've been surviving on sarcasm and caffeine. And so, but this brings me some purpose and yeah, so it's good to be back. And I'm monumentally available to swing by whenever you got time.
I love that idea. All right. Well, we'll do it again very soon. Take care of yourself, and we will see you very soon.
Love you guys.
All right.
Stay safe. Rock out, Bruce.
Indeed. All right. There she goes. Hold on.
Goodbye, Portland. You twisted man.
She left before I could play her out. Everybody just no etiquette.
Goodbye, Portland.
Is that a Portland thing?
You make no sense.
You know?
Renaissance mayors on a latte fence.
Yeah, I don't. I have some connections in the music world that might be loosely tied to the world of Springsteen, usually through the country bluegrass, heavy player session people. But I don't know that I can impact this directly. But I won't rule it out. I'll reach it. I'll do it the best that I can. Real quick, I want to. I don't know if this is good news. It's hard to say the standard on it, but I want you to look at a couple of things before we go here. Let me shrink this down, beg your pardon, because I still have it on. There you go. There you go. This is probably the most terrifying aspect of the Iran war right now, is that Donald Trump seems to think it's Venezuela and it's going to be easy, and that the people involved are, like Maduro and others, financially driven like himself, transactional. And even if the high leadership of Iran was transactional under the guise of being religious fanatics, the people below them are definitely true believers, because that was the vetting process. And those people are going to act like it, and now they're kind of in charge. So the problem with the Pez dispenser, and one of the reasons why it's hard to pull off one of these kind of regime changes in the Middle East, is because that's exactly what occurs. You knock the dude who's, wink and a nod. I don't really believe this shit, but they do. But I'll work something out with you. You knock that guy out for the guy behind him who's been, standing up and saluting the entire time. This is probably the least shocking headline you could possibly see about Donald Trump and war. And look at Hegseth. Whatever the question was, and I think this was about the bombing of the school. As Trump's listening to the question about the bombing, there's Witkoff back there. There's Hegseth trying to think of an answer. We're going to look into it. We're looking into it, right? Trump's war against Iran is already throwing him and his officials for a loop. The U.S. was blindsided by Israel's extensive strikes on Iranian oil depots on Sunday, according to a U.S. official, an Israeli official, and a source with knowledge, Axios reports. Tehran was blanketed in a toxic cloud, I would argue, blanketed in a toxic cloud of smoke after Israel struck 30 Iranian fuel depots in an attack that far exceeded what the U.S. had expected, triggering the first rift between the U.S. and Israel in the war. Also, Trump, look at this scene, by the way. Holy shit. The idea that Trump expects the Israelis to hold back in this circumstance is more ignorant than his cause for the war in the first fucking place, I would like to note. Trump who sought to tout his efforts on affordability, was angered by the strike, fearing the footage of burning oil depots would remind Americans of soaring gas prices at home. This languaging is just like, how dumb? This fucking dumb. Take a look at this shit, ladies and gentlemen. That
Dumb, dumb, stupid. Dumb, silly, stupid, dumb, dumb. Dopey, dippy,
Holy
dumb,
shit.
dumb, stupid, really
the president
dumb.
doesn't like the attack. He wants to save the oil. He doesn't want to burn it, and it reminds people of higher gas prices.
Stupid, dumb, silly, stupid, dumb, dumb, dopey, dippy, dumb, dumb, stupid, really dumb.
Moron!
Fucking hell. Trump argued on Sunday that short-term increases in oil are a very small price to pay for safety and peace, and only fools would think differently. The IDF had informed the U.S. military ahead of the strikes, but the full scale of the operation still caught Washington off guard. We don't think it was a good idea, a senior U.S. official told Axios. An Israeli official said the U.S. message to Israel was, "What the fuck?" Which I believe. I think Hegseth probably just in a signal chat put WTF or a fucking emoji. This was his Truth Sinkhole post. And they're making the same argument, by the way, that Ukraine is making about Russian oil, and I guess technically rightly so. I don't know, the part with Trump in that crowd is like, you not think they're fucking serious about this? You're going to open up this fucking can of worms and then bitch about there's worms all over the table. That seems to be, where'd all these fucking worms come from, is essentially the response from Hegseth and the dipshittery crowd that he's dealing with. And this is, by the way, let me show you an image right here. This is the Strait of Hormuz, kids. Right here. See where that pen tip is right there? Okay. That's it. Okay. These are boats. These are boats. There's like two going through there. And everybody else just going around trying to avoid it. They're all backed up, kind of floating, waiting for a pass outside of Dubai. These boats are kind of stuck and moored full of oil right there. These are in the same situation, stuff coming in or empty boats to come in and pick shit up. By the way, it's not surprising. Like, here's Kasab, which is the edge of the closest part of the landmass between them, if you don't count these little islands. Look how close Dubai is. Not much farther, but they can hit there. They can hit anywhere across here, all the way down through. So, and again, do I think this is the, quote, end of the world economy? No. I think it is another tip towards transitioning to renewables, and that's the worst thing that could happen for Trump and his crowd, and that's partly why they're bitching. What high oil prices and high gas prices really remind people of is, why the fuck are we still using oil and gas for cars? That's what started this transition post 9/11 in haste and ratcheted it up until Trump and his pals came in and said climate change is a hoax and tried to, reverse the policy. And Biden was saying that ship has sailed, and he's absolutely right. And this is just another example of it. And one of the things that Democrats can consistently do, I think, leading up to the midterms, is another reason why we'll, avoid saying you're going to stay out of forever wars in the Middle East and saying you're going to be against regime change wars. One of the ways that you can really say that is, let's handle the reasons why we get involved in those in the first fucking place. Any situation where we play a part in or are subject to a circumstance like the Strait of Hormuz, or a limit in oil supplies at some point that could make us give a shit who is running Iran, for example, the less that's what Drill Baby Drill was arguably about when Sarah Palin floated it. It was literally mitigatory against our reliance on Middle East oil, which was a growing concern it was a bipartisan concern. So anyways, I'll leave you guys to that, but here's what President HAL would do. I would go, one of the reasons why we get dragged into these things time and time again is because of our reliance on the resources that come out of those parts of the world. And that without them, we will be damaged or diminished in our economic and productive power as a people. If you want to start a business, if you want to drive across town, you are subject to these circumstances. So I, your president, will be doing everything I possibly can to eliminate every reason why we rely on these kind of things. If we can, whatever we can bring home in terms of productivity and fuel and all those things for our people, transitioning us to renewables that we don't have to dig up or destroy our waterways or our land to get to, will be our focus, so that we never are reliant on the Strait of Hormuz or the Panama Canal or those again. They might be pluses, they might benefit us, but they aren't crucial. They make all these theaters of the world where all this fighting is going on optional to our way of life, so no one, anyone after me, anybody who takes command of the Senate or something like that, can argue, well, we really need to do this because without that gold, cobalt, oil, whatever it is, we're screwed. We're resilient, impressive people, and there is no reason why we should be on the hook for any of this stuff in the year 2029. It's absurd. Our goal should be renewable and internal energy uses everywhere we possibly can, balanced against the fact that we would like a, Purple Mountain's majesty from sea to shining sea. We want our environment inside the United States to be as nice as we can make it. And renewables will get us there. And American ingenuity will get us there. And support for that, instead of support for, oil subsidies for multinational corporations, is a better use of our tax dollars, and is truly, as the old timers used to call it, America first, when they didn't really mean it. What they meant was America was their first bargaining chip. Americans' 401ks and their survival was the first thing they would throw in as their ante in this oligarchical poker game they're playing amongst each other. No more. If we get involved in a circumstance outside of the United States, it will be for clear moral and ethical reasons, not because if we don't, we won't be able to drive. That's absurd. At this time in history, it's over. You want to talk about a moonshot idea? That's it. If America pulled together in the same way we did in World War II, in the same way that we did around the mission to the moon, the space race, the technological race in the United States, in a very short order, we wouldn't be relying on anybody outside the country for the things we need to survive and thrive. That should be our primary goal. And then if we ever do get involved in a theater of war somewhere in the world, it is because of clear reasons that are moral and just, not because somebody forces our hand. That's weakness. And it seems simple enough, right? Saying something like that and acting on that kind of a policy. It's definitely a transition period from where we are to where we're going. But how hard would that be? Well, it isn't that hard, because it's both what Obama and Biden said. They just tiptoed around the points a little bit more. But I think there's mass agreement on this. It's a nonpartisan issue and a nonpartisan solution for the circumstance we find ourselves in. So, yeah, leave you with that. I'll see you this afternoon. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. It's HAL SPARKS Mega Worldwide. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, and I will see you this afternoon. Hold on, I want to do, where is it? This guy. Yeah. I'll see you guys this afternoon. Share the show. Especially that opening monologue this morning. I think that was pretty good. CSL, we might have to carve that off and make it its own thing. Then I'll start doing long opening monologues, and that'll become a thing, won't it? Why not? I feel like I'm saying something worthwhile. Maybe it could help. Maybe my 2 cents could be invested, turned into pavilions.